My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
All right, everyone. As you can see, we've got a new video. I do have a shorter version of that for us for next week, but I was had a little audio tweak that I needed to make that I hadn't had a chance to do yet, so I'll play that next week and have a little better and shorter version for you. All right, other than that, welcome to the Knighted Ones podcast, episode number 36. That's 36. Again, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF National Champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper who took the week off, and an IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF Sports. So thank you to our producer Nobra for getting the timing right. That was our first go at it. So welcome to the stage, Nobra. Thank you so much for keeping me straight, and I'll have a better edit for you next week. That was my very first one, so.
Hey now.
No, yeah, that was great.
I love it. That's perfect. You started with the hey now. I thought I was going to have to prompt you for it, so that's awesome. Great job on that. Great job on staying on cue. All right. Next, let's go ahead and bring in Ben Stout. What's up, Ben?
What's up? What's up? Good to see you guys.
What's up? Okay. We're not going to do a wrap this week because, Josh is out playing with swords. However, one of the things you can do is check out our YouTube channel. He's starting a new little mini segment called, he called it Tesla Talks, I think, but he's going to change the name because I don't want any copyright infringement in case we have, we end up monetizing the channel at some point. So Josh will be changing that, but check those out. He was talking about the draft this week, and someone who's much more informed on the draft, Alan Levin, last but not least, but this
not
time
least.
last. You got kind of screwed this week by Josh taking the week off, but welcome to the show, my friend.
What's going on?
Oh, new videos, drafts, all kinds of stuff. Transfers. We're going to be talking about transfers this week. Yeah. We're going to be talking a little bit of hoops. We got some UCF baseball to chat about. I think you've got a fun fact of the week for us. Or Oxymoronic.
I brought it back this week.
Well, yeah, you brought it back, and it's probably football or basketball. Who knows? But
100%.
It is a sport you care about, so that'll be good. And then we'll wrap up with other UCF news this week. So excited to have everybody on the show. Josh, enjoy yourself. He's still creating content, so I can't give him too hard of a time. Nobra, thank you for setting us up. I guess here we go. All right, boys. As promised, let's get into a little bit of transfer portal update. So, there's been a lot of movement, ins and outs and ins and some more ins. In fact, we had a big QB transfer come in today, which is absolutely nuts. Former Miami player. And Alan, this is going to be pretty much your show this week. So I'm going to let you go ahead and plug away at the transfer portal update, and then we can discuss a little bit of Jacurri and some of the other transfers that have been going in and out.
Yeah, thank you. So big week, definitely more on the incoming side. Finally, up to this point we hadn't had too many, but on the outgoing side, just to get that out of the way, linebacker Xavier Carter transferred out, who was actually came in the fall window. So another kind of player similar to Goldie Lawrence that's never going to play it down at UCF, just kind of, I guess, saw the writing on the wall with all the linebackers we had, and he'll be transferring out. And then QB converted to DB, Xavier Williams, who transferred to UCF last year from Charlotte, and then in the offseason converted to defensive back, is also transferring out. Interesting about him, I actually had heard he was getting some first team reps, believe it or not, at DB, even though he just transferred, or excuse me, even though he just converted over to defensive back for the first time in his career. But he also is heading out. Maybe he's got some really good tape and we'll be able to kind of translate that to another school. So not any huge losses there. A guy that both guys really have never really played any snaps at UCF. So nothing we're sweating too much there. And we're now up to 24 total outgoing transfers. But the big news since last time we had our podcast, 3 new incoming transfers. And starting with, actually, we have a couple Miami guys. The first one, we got an edge rusher, which is a needed position for us. I want to say it's Nigelic Kelly. Don't know if I botched that first name badly or not, but
this is exactly why I wanted you to cover this segment, because of the names. Like, I used to do that to Andrew all the time on the old shows. I made him read all the tough names.
Well, I've heard of him before at Miami. I remember him. He actually played at Dillard, which is literally like 15 minutes down the road from my house. So I remember the name coming out of high school. I just sorry that I botched the name, but someone I heard of, he was a 4-star prospect out of high school. Is actually a top 11 edge rusher, was recruited by essentially every school in the country, was a top 100 recruit in the entire 2022 class. So this is a guy that was a huge name. And not only that, not just a big name, he produced at Miami. So he's 6'5", 250. His freshman year at Miami, he got a lot of reps coming in right away, played really well, had 4 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss, was actually a really big piece of that 2022 roster. Then last year he dealt with some injury issues. He had a shoulder issue. He had another leg issue, and I think he only played in about 4 games last year, mostly due to injury, but he was expected to be a major part of that defensive line. So this was a big get. As you recall, we had a lot of defensive linemen, or specifically defensive ends that graduated, Tremont Morris-Brash, a bunch of other guys that left, Joshua Seliskar. So we did have a need at edge or defensive end there, and we got it in the form of Kelly. So I think that was a really big pickup. This was someone that was expected to be a big part of Miami's team next year. So that was a guy that's not just a big name, but also someone that produced at his previous school. So that was one of UCF's, I think, biggest needs, and they were able to fill that with Kelly. Then the next one was Traquan Fegans. He was someone that's been at 2 schools now. He's started out his career at Alabama, was actually another really, really big recruit in the 2023 class. He's from Alabama, Alabaster, Alabama, was a top 7 recruit in the entire state of Alabama that year and 105th nationally. So this is another guy that was extremely well recruited, and not just by a lot of schools, by UCF. UCF had an offer for him in high school. And then when he redshirted at Alabama his freshman year, then switched over to transferred over to USC. And when he was in the portal originally, UCF offered him again. So that we had offered him twice. Now we finally got our guy, third time around. I guess third time's a charm here. Didn't have a lot of playing time. He played kind of sparingly at USC last year, played 6 games, started in 2, had 9 tackles, not really any other stats, not any interceptions or pass breakups or anything like that. But he's a guy that is considered, has a lot of promise. 6'1", 190 pounds, cornerback. Another position UCF has really been loading up on. I didn't really think we needed another corner per se, but especially after we had just gotten the transfer out of Ohio State. But UCF is really loading up at that position. As you may recall from last week's episode, we have 6 DBs that are transferring out, and now we have 6 DBs that are also transferring in. So I guess it's kind of an equal trade there. Seemingly very much upgraded in talent in the secondary. A lot of the guys that left outside of maybe Martinez, Nakai, were guys that weren't really starters, just Corey Thornton and Akai Martinez. So everyone else was kind of a reserve player. So now we've gotten in seemingly a lot of promise, a mix of guys that have played a lot at DB at their previous schools and some guys that are just kind of, have a lot of potential. And I think Fagans is one of them, and someone that clearly UCF wanted. That was the third time we've offered him a scholarship. So clearly someone that was high on our board or on our list there, and someone that was, played at two of the biggest blue bloods in the country. And then the third transfer.
Whoa. Two of the biggest blue blood. Well, yeah, I guess Fagans, you could say that, but
Bama and USC, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. USC, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. At least at one point, we'll say.
They're a big-time program over in the West Coast for sure, though.
Yeah, and we'll see how Bama does after the departure of Nick Saban to the NFL draft commentary.
Yeah. And then the third and final transfer we got this week alone is another Miami guy, former Miami quarterback Jacurri Brown, who once again, I think we all saw this as a need after Timmy McLean transferred out last week. Basically, the remaining quarterbacks behind KJ were all freshmen, all underclassmen, with the only one that even having any college reps was Dylan Risk, who, just really played in garbage time. So I think this was a need for UCF to get a backup quarterback. And he's essentially just replacing Timmy McLean. I think that's exactly what UCF wanted. Another 4-star prospect in high school. Once again, out of Georgia, had a ton of offers out of high school, kind of like all these guys that we've gotten recently. Considered a 3-star prospect in the portal. Another kind of big quarterback, 6'4", 220, kind of almost has that KJ mold in a sense. Like I said, out of Georgia. And he also has some, I wouldn't say significant, but a good amount of playing time in college. As a freshman, he played quite a few games when their quarterback that year, I'm drawing a blank on his name, was injured. So Brown had a lot of playing time. Last year, he only played in the bowl game, the Pinstripe Bowl, had a few touchdowns. He's a guy that's a dual threat guy. I think if you look at his stats, more of the damage has definitely been on the ground, has a lot of rushing touchdown. His throwing stats are kind of similar to Timmy. He's a guy that he'll rack up some yards, he'll get a few touchdowns, but he's had some turnovers in a lot of the games that he's played. Whether that's, I don't know much about Miami's O-line or skill players, but
so a couple things on Jacurri. And I just love saying his name. This is like this is going to be all-time favorite name, Hall of Fame name platforms like Jacurri. I just want to say it that way. I don't know why. I just do. But a couple things that you're mentioning. O-line, Miami really had a patchwork O-line the last couple of years. That's part of that NIL type of situation. The other part of it is he was expected to compete for the starting spot going into this year. They had another transfer that came in, and he was going to compete with him, but the expectation was that transfer was going to come in for 1 year. Because I think Mario Cristobal's in win now mode to kind of save his job. And then he was expected to compete again next year. Now he's got 3 years of eligibility left. So for us, our expectation is he's going to come on back up, learn the system, and then potentially compete next year with whomever we bring in and EJ Colson. So Jacurri was actually a pretty highly touted and sought after transfer. So this is a big win for UCF, especially considering how we play and how KJ plays. I mean, he's the kind of guy who will lower his shoulder. He'll pull a Blake Bortles and lower his shoulder into a defender. He plays really, really, really physical. He got hurt, actually. I think it was last season. He was hurt for a few games. So this would be a way for us to continue the forward progress. And if Jacurri has enough time to learn the system, he's the prototypical. I mean, having this guy as a starting quarterback a couple of years ago versus having him as the backup role, coming in at UCF as the backup role, I mean, that just says volumes about where we are today as a program from a recruiting perspective. This is a big deal, even though he's taking that role.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a great backup quarterback, guy that has played a good amount of games at a Power 4 school. So yeah, I agree. He's someone that not only, I think the biggest thing that UCF wanted to do was, have KJ insurance, right? I mean, at this point, if KJ were to get injured before Brown transferred in, we'd be pretty SOL, like with 3 guys that have played very minimal in a very win now type of year. You don't want to be relying on a freshman quarterback, someone like EJ Colson, who's 17. I mean, he's not even, he could be in high school another year. And the other 2 who have played either no or minimal reps. So to bring in someone like this to essentially replace Timmy is a great pickup for UCF. And like you said, Roger, it's someone that has 3 years of eligibility and could, seemingly compete for the job next year. So this was not only a short-term insurance move, but also a potential long-term move. So UCF, I think, has done a great job, not just, taking the best available player in the portal. They're really getting after their needs. I think all 3 positions that they secured this week were positions of need, and all guys that have a good amount of college experience. So I think the portal has been amazing this year for UCF. They've definitely gained more than they've lost. They've upgraded in talent. We're now up to 19 total transfers, 12 on defense, 7 on offense, and really address positions of need. And from my view, at this point, I think we probably maybe need 1 more O lineman and receivers. And then if you want to get a little greedy, maybe 1 more defensive end. But I think if we can get 1 or 2 more O linemen, and then receiver, in my opinion, is by far our biggest need. I think we're set because we did lose a lot of receivers in the portal. And we didn't really gain any now that Goldie Lawrence has transferred out. So we've actually had 0 receiver incoming transfers. So I think that's our biggest need with that, and maybe 1 more O lineman. Other than that, we are set in the portal. We filled all of our biggest voids, and I think we're looking really deep at a good amount of positions heading into next year.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree with what you guys said. Not only how we fulfilled our needs, but it is an exciting transfer getting in Jacurri Brown. You mentioned, he does kind of play. I was watching some of his highlights earlier. I mean, he does kind of play kind of a similar way than Timmy McLean does, but the good news is he's a bigger guy. He's a much bigger guy than Timmy McLean was, and ever since Gus has been here, we have needed our backup quarterback to play significant minutes, in significant moments, every season since Gus has been here. Now, you could say that's just bad luck or whatever it may be, but it's also, the style of play and the style of offense that we run here at UCF under Gus Malzahn. I mean, we need to have our quarterbacks be able to have the ability to get a first down with their legs and be mobile. And certainly KJ provides that for us. And like you said, Roger, I mean, KJ, the way he, played at Arkansas, the way he's expected to play here is to use that size of use his ability to run and to run over people. And sometimes when that happens, it's a risky development where he could get injured. And so having somebody that not only with the speed, a little bit of experience, and the size of Jacurri Brown is definitely a great insurance policy, as you guys mentioned. And then also the other highlights that I've watched a little bit is Kelly, the defensive end that we brought in from Miami. He seems to be that type of player, at least from his high school highlights and some of the things that I saw at Miami. Just seems to be relentless after the football, like just relentless after the quarterback. I mean, he seems to have a quick first step, and he uses a lot of speed and power to get to the quarterback, or in some cases, which I saw in the highlights, the rusher, which is great, because we need help with that as well. And so these are 2 big time pickups as far as I'm concerned. And then obviously somebody with the experience at certain programs like Fagan's, hopefully he can, provide some great, contributions there in the secondary.
Yeah, and the other part about Fagans is he's really a key to some of the other players that we're going after as well. He's close to
Hmm.
some of the other players. He's also got a brother that's fairly highly rated as well that's out there. And, the interesting thing to me, and Ben, we've talked about this before on the show. I guess I can hide the scroll now. We've talked about it on the show and on the previous show is like, how was this going to shake out for UCF as far as portal guys and continuously recruiting them. And Gus
Right.
has done a really, really good job of continuing that connection with them so that when they get to the portal, we are a serious player for a lot of these high-end transfer recruits. So Miami especially, we've seen more of that. And I think that is interesting in the sense that our guys going there for the bag for the first year, and then when they don't get the playing time or haven't developed or whatever, then they're going to UCF, especially when it comes to just one of the knocks has been we're doing the state of Orlando thing, and we've been recruiting more of Orlando, Alabama, and Georgia, Atlanta area specifically. And not really going to South Florida. Well, a lot of these South Florida kids are coming back to us
Yeah.
in these transfer situations, and I don't think people are understanding that those South Florida kids are coming back to us. They're just coming back to us a year later. And
Yeah.
when we started those discussions, it was when we were still G5 and didn't know we were going into the Power Four. Notice I just skipped over the Power Five to the Power Four. At the time, and we were still having those discussions. And I think we've got even more of a boost with that, both with the combination of Gus Malzahn being at UCF and how he's done things, but also that new label that we have on there.
Yeah, it was that discussion that we used to always have of like, oh man, with this transfer portal, are we going to become a farm system for other big name schools? And I was like, well, it could be the other way around. You could just get those big name school kids back, and now we're kind of both. Like we're continuing the relationships. We're pulling kids from that we recruited out of high school, but we're pulling them from big programs as Alan mentioned, and now it's just kind of ironic as rightfully we put on the bottom of the screen there, Miami has become our we've kind of overtaken them in the big three of the state, and they have now become our farm system. I would say so. That's both ironic and quite funny.
Yeah,
That's
hilarious. Yeah, I think we lost Alan on the stream for a bit, so I'm sure we'll get him back here shortly. To me, it's just again, it goes to show how much UCF has progressed, right?
Right.
As a program, what the brand means, where we are positioned within not only the state, but also, within college football. So, for me, we have to, I just feel like this is another measure of our growth. One of the things, oh, there's Alan. He's back. Hey, Alan.
Hey.
That was the fastest reboot I've ever seen in my life. It goes a lot faster than me. So we were just talking about Miami and our position, within the state and also in the country as a transfer destination, et cetera. So I think you had some more things that you wanted to bring up on this topic. So why don't you go ahead and finish that out?
Just finishing up on who else UCF is going after in the portal. From what I'm hearing, as far as who are set to host or potentially host, and who are actually just targeting in the portal, one would be Toledo running back Penny Boone, who's actually considered one of the top running backs in the portal. Someone that's interesting to see. There's been some rumors about potentially a UCF running back transfer. I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but just the writing on the wall seems like it'd be Johnny Richardson, a guy that has gotten less and less playing time over the years. He just seems like the most logical running back to transfer. That would, in my mind, be why else would UCF be going after a running back when you have RJ Harvey and Miles Montgomery and Johnny and obviously the 2 freshman backs that are coming in. So in my mind, I would think that there's going to be a guy that's potentially transferring. Like I said, I don't know, but Johnny Richardson's been someone that's been rumored to transfer now for, I think, the last 2 seasons. So that would not surprise me. Then you have Auburn linebacker Cam Riley, was another one that we're targeting and supposedly has already come on a visit. Then Auburn wide receiver Javarius Johnson. Like I've said, we have a really big void at wide receiver 3 at the bare minimum, and just depth in general. So those are all guys that are either set to visit or who have already visited. But the Toledo one's interesting with the running back. A little bit of inside knowledge I do have. Johnny Richardson, from what I'm told, has wanted to transfer in principle in order to get more playing time, maybe be a star at a group of 5 program. But he really loves UCF. He's one of those guys like Tremont Morris, Brash, RJ Harvey that just really love the program and sees himself potentially being a coach here one day if he doesn't go pro or whatever the case may be. So he's a guy that's been very reluctant to transfer, but I'm just putting on my logic cap here, and I think the only reason we'd go after one of the top running backs in the entire portal would be because we are going to lose a big playmaker at the position, which I would think RJ is not going to transfer. I would think Miles Montgomery is not going to transfer. So that kind of leaves Johnny Richardson as the odd man out.
Gotcha. What do you know about Penny Boone? Not to put you on the spot, Alan, but is he a type of running back like Johnny Richardson? Is he kind of that small, shifty type, or is he more like RJ and actually Montgomery that kind of had a little size?
Much more like them, yeah. More of a
Okay.
size guy. Someone, I think we've seen with Gus Malzahn, he's not really recruiting small running backs like Scott Frost did and things like that. So, he's a guy that had 1,400 yards last year at Toledo, was a real playmaker, just probably unheralded just for the fact that he was at Toledo, but Toledo had a decent season. And he's a bigger back, not someone that's small and shifty like Johnny. So you would think Johnny would, that kind of fills a role, right? A guy that's a change of pace and
Right.
someone in the spring that was playing a lot on the outside in the slot, not just a guy that you're going to give the ball to 3 times. He's not an every down back. So, but I think he does see himself as someone that could be the RB1 on some program in the country. But yeah, I think doesn't look like Gus is trying to replace him in just terms of like an equal type of running back or same style of running back. But I just think they're going after a running back. I don't see why you'd go after one of the top running backs in the portal unless you didn't think one of your guys was leaving.
Yeah, and it seems like they could utilize that.
Or trying to force one out.
Yeah. It seems like they could utilize his pass catching ability, his ability to kind of like move in space and just get out there. But a part of Gus's game, I guess, is more of a little bit more of a power runner. You want kind of a little bit more in the RJ mold than Johnny Richardson, I guess.
Well, I think part of it is you've got RJ that's going to be like an every down back, right? And then you've got a change of pace back that's going to be like more of the goal line and change of pace kind of back. And then you got Johnny Richardson. But I know that in camp they were running him with the wide receivers, so he may or may not be comfortable with that. I think if you can get him the ball in space, he's a guy that can be dangerous there, but getting through the line is going to be tough because he's more of a sideline to sideline. And when we talk about tendencies defensively, one of the things we look at is we knew that if Johnny Richardson was in, right, he was going east-west, he was not going north-south. So the defense already knew that it was going to be an edge play and could prepare for that just based on tendencies. It's like Otis. If you remember Otis could catch out of the backfield. He could go east-west, and he could go north-south as well. Or Johnny Richardson just pretty much goes east-west. If he gets dinged once going through the line in an A gap or B gap, he's pretty much going to go down. Now, there's a skill set there for him. I just think that you can't disguise as much, and what we're trying to do is disguise what our players are doing in Gus's offense, and that's kind of tough. So I call shenanigans on that. I think Gus is trying to find a role for him. It's late in the portal season for him to transfer. Now I could be wrong, but I don't feel like they could that he would leave this late in the portal season, but that's just me. But you may be right too.
Well, no, it's a fair point because the portal closes tomorrow, so that's another kind of update. The portal does close tomorrow, but I just find it. It just seems odd. Like running back does not seem like a position that we need to host. When you talk about you brought in 2 4-star running backs, 2 of the highest recruited running backs we've ever had, and then we have a bona fide star, and then 2 really proven guys behind him. Like maybe they want to replace like Jordan McDonald. Like I don't know. It just seems like an odd position compared to other positions that we need. And this is not the first running back of this window that we've been even rumored. It's been now for a couple of weeks we've been looking at different running backs, which just seems to me odd. I don't get that other than, hey, let's add a crap ton of depth. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like the aglet, right? Unless someone explains it to you, you have no idea what's going on or what it is. So we'll see what happens as we move through the season. All right, what else you got for us, Alan?
The only other things to bring up, maybe if you guys want to talk about it, could bring a debate, was just so quarterback. You know, I completely get the reason why we brought in Jacurri, but my question is at some point, does UCF actually try to develop the quarterbacks they bring in out of high school? We've essentially used a transfer quarterback every single year since 2021, and we will again next year. And then we're talking about if Brown plays the year after again. Does that, now we have 5 QBs on scholarship. My gut would say that one of those QBs is going to leave, whether it's now or at some point, because they know they're not going to play ever when you have 5 quarterbacks on the roster. But is it a mistake, just continuing to do that? Not necessarily Brown specifically, but to essentially always go after transfers. And I get the need of like win now and go get the best guy available with how college football is now. But do we eventually want to, develop a guy like Colson or Trujillo or, Risk? Because at some point you're going to keep pushing these guys out the more and more experienced kind of veteran transfers you bring. And when you have an experienced kind of veteran, you're more likely to play them, as we're seeing with KJ Jefferson. So at some point, do you do that, or do you need to wait for a year, maybe where it's rebuilding or whatever? I just feel like if we continue to do this, we're never really going to play quarterback because they're never going to get an opportunity, or they're just going to leave.
Ben?
Yeah, I just think this is another one of those like nature of the business of college football nowadays is that it is. I mean, shoot, we've talked about it so often how the top prospects certainly are ones that get recruited, but the kind of back 20 years ago when I was in high school, like you had just more opportunity as a high school athlete to get recruited by a number of schools because coming out of high school, that's somebody, you were somebody who was, looked at as a possible contributor or whatever. But now it's just the transfer portal is just so heavily recruited and there's so many players available that there's not as much concentration on the high school athlete in general. And when you have that situation, and you have a position in quarterback of a college football team, which is the most, arguably the most important position in all of sports is quarterback as far as value to a certain team. It just gets kind of like that situation that all of college sports is kind of dealing with the transfer portal. It kind of gets put under a microscope. And so it is rather interesting. It's one of the reasons why we've said so many times, like, man, I get excited when we sign a top high school athlete or whatever, especially if we sign a top high school quarterback. But if we, I guess I have to just see until they actually get some playing time on whether or not they're actually going to contribute anything significant to UCF. I don't know. It's just difficult because, I mean, you see it even with top quarterbacks. I mean, like the 5-star QBs of the world, the Arch Mannings of the world, like they're just not, there's not there. It's like, it seems like so long ago now. It was only a few years ago where those guys would certainly start as a freshman, regardless of where they were going. But it just doesn't seem to be the case anymore, because they're plugging immediate needs. They're plugging those holes with experienced college football quarterbacks, and so it might not just be a UCF problem, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It might not just be a UCF worry. But you're right. I would love to know what Riley Trujillo could bring to the table. Or I think when you have the reclassified guy like EJ Colson, I think you kind of just are ready to wait for that. Hopefully he is too. But Dylan Risk as well. I mean, these are guys that played at top high school programs and certainly could be contributors, but I don't know if they're necessarily ever going to be contributors for UCF, which is interesting.
So I think it's extremely quixotic if you think that folks are going to have that same traditional type of development cycle as a quarterback.
It's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, and a big reason for that is now the recruiting game has almost, for quarterbacks, has flipped on its head, right? It's all right. We talked about feeder schools in the G5. Well, look at what we're pulling in. Every week or 2 weeks, we're talking about bringing in a top level G5 player into the Power 5 leagues. And what are the other Power 5 leagues doing? They're scraping the top level G5 players and bringing them up after, whether it be quarterback or other positions, after they've developed. So those what you're seeing a lot of is, we worried about college football becoming the developmental league for the NFL, but what you're seeing is the G5 leagues, are becoming the developmental leagues for the Power 4. And you're in practice right now. Arch Manning was a little bit different. He originally said, I don't know if you remember this, but they were expecting him to start, and then he said that he would step aside for the quarterback that they had there. I don't remember exactly what the reasoning was, but Arch could have started, but he decided not to, and said he was going to stay with Texas regardless. And I can't remember if it's because he said that he earned it or something happened. If he didn't feel
Quinn Ewers, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the country.
But they were going to say at the time Arch Manning could have started, but he felt like Quentin Ewers gave them a better opportunity to win, so he's kind of stepped aside. So at the end of the day, with the quarterback position, I don't think we'll ever see that again, because you've got guys that'll have 1 or 2 years left that'll come into these Power 4 programs, and then they won't develop there. Their transition to college football, unless they're a 5-star, right, coming out of high school, or very high level 4-star that's seen as a can't miss, and those guys are expected to come in and play right away and win right away. So there's no middle ground anymore for that developmental type cycle.
Or they just develop at one school and then transfer to another. It's like you're taking, the backup quarterback that did spend a couple years developing at a Miami or a Florida State or whatever, and you're taking that quarterback to be your starter when you need a hole. And so that's the funny thing about it. The other interesting thing we're talking about, like the 5-star QBs of the world, coming out of high school, is I think I read an article middle of this college football season that talked about how I think they only looked at the SEC and the Big Ten, but regardless, the Power 4 in general, it was a study of NIL and how much money that they were getting. So this is obviously the other half of the coin, right? We talked about transfer portal, but NIL as well. And because of this phenomena of you still want to bring in that 5-star QB, but he may not start year one, but you want to keep him at your school so you can benefit from his skills. It was a study of NIL, and it discovered that the backup QB at most SEC schools was actually getting paid more at NIL than the starting QB, because because they're trying to pay him just to stay, which is just which is wild in itself, which is also a example of just how the college sports landscape, especially college football landscape, has just been so turned on its head in the last 5 years.
But in a way, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Right, but like at some point someone has to develop some quarterback, or there will be no quarterbacks left, right? Like I'm saying, like some freshmen have to develop. Maybe it's not UCF or whatever, but like eventually get to the point, right, where you're going to have to develop them when all these seniors and all these other upperclassmen leave. Someone's going to have to develop someone, or how is it going to keep going on, right?
Yeah, of course. I think that's just the reason why I'm saying that I think they are going to get developed. It's just eventually they're going to get tired and we're not going to be able to see them at UCF. It's almost like we got to look at the backup quarterbacks at other schools that don't feel like they're getting their due, and hope that they come back home to UCF or come to UCF. It's like, I don't know. It's just it's kind of the unfortunate reality for me, anyways. Of like, I don't want to get too excited about the three guys that we've been talking about the most, Risk, Trio, and Colson, because I don't know which one of them, if any of them, are going to play any significant games for UCF, and that's just the unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alan.
No, I just also feel like it's silly because like we get in these quarterbacks and we keep bringing in transfers, and
Right.
I feel like, okay, you're going to do that at positions where you need depth, right? Wide receiver, linebacker, whatever. But quarterback, there's only one guy. And the more and more we do that, UCF hasn't had a quarterback that's played 3 straight years in a row since I don't even know when. It's been so long that like I think it affects chemistry though too. Like, yeah, maybe you have a guy come in like KJ Jefferson that balls out in the 1 year that he's here, but at some point, like you'd like to see a quarterback start 3 years in a row for UCF, and I don't see. That's the only people that could do that would probably be a high school guy or someone that I guess is very young when they come in and transfer. But because if you're not developing any of these freshman quarterback, it'd be a shame to keep having like a JRP, a KJ. I mean, some of them can ball out for that 1 year, but they're not going to have a lot of time to establish chemistry with receivers, offensive linemen, and things like that. And maybe it keeps working out fine, but I just would like to see UCF have a consistency at starting quarterback, even at 3 years, not even 4 or 5, just like 3 years. Because I mean, we haven't had a guy that's even started 2 full seasons. JRP been injured, and we haven't seen a guy start 2 full seasons for UCF in a row probably since like Dylan Gabriel.
Well, I think so. There's a lot to unpack there. Let me just say this globally and the way I see this going forward, because it's not just UCF; it's all the other schools as well, right?
That's true.
I think there's 3 kind of levels. And one of the things that you hear high school coaches complaining about is there's not enough roster spots at the Power 4 for their guys. So a lot of them are going FCS. They're telling them to go to FCS, or they're telling them to go to G5s and then transfer up, right? I kind of see it as 3 levels. You've got the quote unquote high 4 stars and 5 stars, which are considered to be can't miss NFL prospects. Those guys can be brought in and maybe will be there a season and then start 3. Like I could see that, right? If they stick around, unless their junior season, they decide to go to the draft, right? I could see that. Then you've got like the 4 stars, middle 4 stars, who we're starting to really, really dig into. A lot of those guys, from a quarterback position standpoint, again, because there's only one position, I see the other positions, I could see those guys coming in, making an impact after their freshman year and staying 3 years, right? And then you've got and I hate to say this because we just now gotten to the 4 stars, right? You got these high 3-star guys, low 4-star guys who would make a lot of P4 rosters before. The high recruiting, and this is where I kind of feel like UCF falls into, we're not at that 64 to 72 range on recruiting anymore, right? We're now in that upper 30s to potentially 15, 20s. We are operating more like what we looked at UF and Blue Bloods, from a recruiting perspective, we're operating more along that model than we are that middle to lower tier P4 programs, the Georgia Techs of the world, the Dukes of the world, all those other folks. They tend to keep folks around and develop them. We are currently, and I think it's going to continue to kind of be like, this going forward. And a third point I want to make about that, some of that is because we're in the state of Florida. A lot of these players that go out of the state of Florida and leave, and they either don't get playing time or they don't like where they're at or whatever. You've got 4 schools in the state of Florida, one of which is UF, who tends to get, super high recruiting classes, which will bring those recruits in who will, if they don't get playing time, will transfer on their own, right? They're not bringing a lot of those Florida talent guys that went somewhere else back in the transfer portal. They're still heavy on high school recruiting. So we are all those guys that leave that want to come back to the state of Florida or the Southeast or have ties to the state of Florida. They're going to come back to UCF. Miami, they're going to play portal champions, or not portal champions. They're going to play high school recruiting champions, because their biggest claim to fame and the only thing they really have had consistent success on is recruiting in the offseason. They've been the offseason champions for a long time now. So again, I just don't see that happening for UCF, because we're almost in that upper stratosphere from a recruiting perspective, I feel like, and we're operating like one of the blue bloods or the top 30 programs as far as recruiting is concerned, because we can, because of where we are and what we're becoming versus some of the other programs. So I kind of see a stratification there. What you're saying, Alan, on that developmental quarterback, I see more of that at schools that are not going to be known to compete, right? So you think about Indiana's of the world, you think about Illinois' of the world, you think about Georgia Tech, you think about Wake Forest, you think about Vanderbilt, you know what I mean? All of those type of schools, they will develop guys. Georgia Tech.
And we'll just steal them after, basically.
What's that?
And then we'll just go steal them after, basically.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Say thank you very much.
Well, I think it's not even those guys. I think it's the higher level guys that go to the top 15 type of recruiting schools that don't get that time. We're the ones scooping those guys up, especially the Florida ones, right? That's what I see us do. That's kind of like the niche that we've carved out for ourselves.
But those guys need to be developed then, right? If they're not playing at those top 15 schools.
Well, they're developed from a program perspective, from a strength and conditioning perspective, sure, and from a speed perspective. We've all talked about it. Trey's talked about it, about how the difference is in speed from high school. Look at John Walker, his first year versus his second year. Even those guys, there's that adjustment period, putting them in a strength and conditioning program for their position. They're getting all of that. And then they come to us, and then they may be in the off season and get, camp. They may get, if they come early enough, they get spring camp and summer camp, and then they're off to the races. And at that point, you've got 2 years in a college program and you've quote unquote been developed. Now it's time to go get some playing time.
True. Fair.
I mean, that's just how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about though, Alan, is like obviously we're not going to get these guys the development as far as experience goes, just because we just don't have the room to put them in there unless there's a significant injury. And I'm not sure how much of that, I guess, has necessarily changed, unless you're talking about that big time like star. Now, granted, we say that as UCF fans, are two of our, best QBs of certainly the last decade. I mean, have been guys that started as freshmen. So,
right.
So it is a little bit kind of a switch in mentality, but I think we're just going to have to see who develops, without the on the field development, outside of a little bit of garbage time here and there, but we'll have to see how that goes. But it's just an interesting thing. It's like, are we developing Dylan Risk for Louisville one day or wherever he might transfer to? Or are we actually developing him to play, QB here? And so it's
let's just put it this way too. Alan, you said it yourself earlier. We upgraded every position. And I think something new that UCF fans may not be fully aware of is that we are, again, in the process of upgrading. Gus talked about it too. Like, we're in the process of upgrading our position and leveling up again, right? And there was a interview, I can't remember who it was with, but it was a recent interview where they were talking about UCF recruiting. And one of the things that you're seeing those guys that were high-level recruits for us a year or two ago are no longer at the level that we're expecting to recruit at. And so those guys are kind of being pushed out. I think what you're seeing at UCF that we're not used to is those high-level guys, or what we consider high-level guys, are starting to be pushed out. We're no longer diamond mining. We're no longer developing for 3 years and then having a consistent team for 2 years and then starting all over again the next year. We leveled up to start bringing those 4-star guys in, and now we're leveling up even within the 4-star ranks to level up the physical size. Because what we were getting before were 4-stars that were talented, did really well in high school, but may still be a little bit undersized. Now you're seeing us upgrade the not only the talent level, but also the size of the athlete that we're getting. And I think this offseason you saw a lot of guys get told you're going to lose. We've got all these people on the board now. You're going to lose some playing time. I think there was some very frank conversations and why you saw so much turnover this year as opposed to years past where we were not being as successful and couldn't compete on that level. Part of that's NIL, where our NIL has leveled up again. Right? We just had, and I know this isn't specific to NIL, we just had the most gifts ever to UCF in the day of giving. I think it was $9.1 million or something in one day for UCF giving. There's more money going into it. And the fact of the matter is, I think Mark said this on Mark Daniels said this recently on an interview. A lot of the money that's coming in are not from UCF graduates for the NIL program. So they're Orlando residents and they're investing in UCF because they've seen the success. So I think all of those factors combined, and it may be a little exasperated this year because I think we needed to level up. Gus knows we needed to level up, and he did level up in physical size. As we build depth through high school, as we get higher level players from high schools, our NIL dollars come up, I think you'll start to see some of that slow down in a lot of positions. But we're still in a transition period right now, so you're seeing more of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. It just, one point I would say though is that UCF has not had elite quarterback play probably since Dylan Gabriel. So we'll see if it changes with the KJ and in the future with other transfers. But it is interesting to say, like, although we have been getting transfers there, I haven't seen elite quarterback play at UCF since 2021. But that could just be a product of injuries and other things. But we'll see what happens.
I think injuries are definitely a part of it. The other part of it is, we talked about this on the podcast quite a bit. It was a second-year QB, so essentially you had a sophomore QB running our offense in a senior's athletic body, right? So I think JRP was a favorite of Gus. He actually recruited him, and I think we were left in a tight spot when Dylan Gabriel left. And we didn't have anybody that we could go after. So we grabbed JRP and we rode with him. And because he had the legs and Gus thought he could use the legs, but JRP got hurt and we didn't have a lot of depth behind him. I think we got caught with our pants down a little bit. Yeah. So, I think it's more of an extension of that because I agree with you. Elite QB play, we haven't had since Dylan Gabriel. And even Dylan Gabriel got better. When he went to Oklahoma, he ran a lot more. He always had a pretty ball that he could throw, but he was more dynamic versus sitting in the pocket like he did in that Louisville game when he got hurt. He didn't know how to run. When he played for Oklahoma, he was not afraid to run. He didn't run. He wasn't a run first kind of guy, but he could run, and he had designed running plays for him. When we played them. So I think that's the difference. So we'll see what happens with KJ. I think Jacurri Brown, I mean, he's got 3 years left. You got EJ Colson, that's a freshman. I think he's going to be the type that sticks around, because a lot of times the players don't want to stick around either, because they get that first bag, and a lot of other schools, they don't get a higher dollar bag to stick around for the second year. And it's a second year of earnings potential that they're leaving on the table along with the playing time.
Yep.
So, all right. Speaking of that, we mentioned the draft. Alan, why don't you take us through the draft for this year?
Yeah, good year. After last year, UCF didn't have a single person drafted, so a little 1 year drought there, so to speak. And this year we had 2 guys drafted. It was the 2 that we expected. Javon Baker went in the 4th round to the Patriots, and then Tylen Grable, our offensive tackle, went in the 6th round to the Bills. So both AFC East draft picks, 2 guys that pretty much I think where we saw them. Javon Baker, I know some people said as high as the 2nd round. Most people thought the 3rd, and he ended up going really high in the 4th to, I think, a great fit. The Patriots need skill position depth and help. He went there and potentially made the quote of the draft. I think we all saw that on social media. He said, get your popcorn ready. I make handicapped people stand up. Don't know if he'll get canceled or not, but that's what he said, quote unquote. That was a good, I think that was a good fit for him with the Patriots rebuilding. So he went early in the 4th, and then Grable went there in the 6th to the Bills. And really no one else was expected to get drafted. I think we thought that maybe JRP could go like late in the 7th, maybe Jason Johnson could go late in the 7th, but I think most of us expected them to be undrafted free agents. And on that note, we did have 5 players that ended up getting signed to teams after the draft. So JRP went to Pittsburgh, who their quarterback room just had a lot of turnover. They obviously got Russell Wilson in the offseason, and they traded for Justin Fields. So I guess JRP, I don't know if he's going to be quarterback there or whatnot, but he was signed to Pitt. Tremont Morris-Brash went to the Chargers. Jason Johnson and Alec Collar both went to the Cowboys. Interesting. Alec Collar, I think I wasn't sure for sure if he was going to get signed, but that was good to see. And then I think the surprise, Sean Peterson, who was, kind of a linebacker edge hybrid, he got signed to the Bucs. I would have thought maybe a couple other UCF players got signed before he did. I didn't even know he was on any NFL team radars. But he did get signed to the Bucs. So overall, 2 draft picks and 5 additional UDFAs for a total of 7 players. So pretty good NFL coup there for UCF.
Yeah, and what we're seeing on the projections for JRP, he was projecting as a receiver. So I think people see him as a receiver. He played receiver. I don't know if you guys remember that one pass to him where he got the interference play. It wasn't last season, the season before last, where he got the interference flag. But that's what we're expecting out of him. I actually expected Alec Collar to get a shot. Whether he lasts or not, I don't know. Special teams player, played really well, willing to do that dirty work. And the NFL is always looking for players that are good at special teams that will do that. He's also a good blocking tight end. So he's got some size to him. He's a good, absolutely amazing dude. Like we saw him actually the last time we were allowed on the field. I was there. Alan, you were there. A few other people were there. I talked to him a little bit, and with his size and his blocking ability and the fact that he's a pretty good special teams player, those guys have the opportunity to get signed. Now, will he last? Will he just be a special teams player? Will he make a 52-man roster? Will he be cut? Those are all questions yet to be seen. But I'm not surprised that he made it. There were some other players too in recent years that you were like, things that make you say, and have stayed, in the NFL due to their willingness to work their way up from the special teams positions. Jason Johnson, I think that he will get a chance. I think he's good enough and a smart enough player and a hard enough hitter and got a good enough size that he'll have a chance to stick. Will he be a starter? Probably not, at least initially, but he may grow into one. I know I keep talking about the undrafted free agents, but the guys that did get picked up, it's funny. After all that noise with regard to Gabe Davis last season and the Bills fan base and everything that was going on with him before he moved on, it's interesting that they picked up yet another UCF football player. They're almost becoming like the Jacksonville Jaguars of the Northeast for us.
Except they're actually drafting them instead of just picking them up in the undrafted free agents like Jacksonville always does.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting. Interesting the Chargers pick up, and definitely interesting that the Cowboys picked up two of our guys. I don't remember one team that's picked up two of our players. But if we're building connections, and I don't know who the staff is now at the Cowboys, but you got to remember a lot of this too is who the head coaches know, right? So George O'Leary used to know a lot of NFL head coaches, and he used to pave the way for guys to get picked up there. Gus Malzahn knows a lot of NFL head coaches. I imagine his network helped these guys out as well. The assistants, Herb Hand, a few of the other assistants also know a lot of NFL guys. And part of their job as head coaches is to help those guys move forward. Interestingly enough, Matt Lee did get drafted in the 7th round, lower than our highest O-lineman, or our lowest O-lineman, Tylen Grable. And also, interestingly enough, with regard to him, he's going to my Bengals. So it'll be interesting to see, but I can root for him again now that he's a Bengal. So we'll see what happens with that.
And Tatum Bethune got drafted as well.
Yes, Tatum Bethune.
Where did he wind up going?
He went to – where did he go? Was it the Rams?
I don't know, but while you're saying that, interestingly enough, Gus Malzahn did not tweet congratulations to Matt Lee. There was
49ers.
49ers.
Tatum Bethune with the 49ers, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he did not tweet at Matt Lee, and he did to a lot of his other former players and current players that made it. There was some rumor that, after everything that happened with Mikey Keene, that Matt Lee wasn't too happy with Gus Malzahn, and they had a little bit of a falling out. So he does that with everyone else. All right. Alan, what else you got on the draft? Anything else, or does that wrap it up?
No, that pretty much wrapped it. The only one I was surprised that maybe didn't get a look was Lahaki Paole. He was arguably our best or second or best offensive lineman over the last couple of seasons. Guy that played with UCF for 5 years. Thought he was going to at least get a couple of looks, but not even a camp invite yet or anything. Maybe it could still happen, but that was, I think, all the guys that got signed. I was not super surprised, other than Sean Peterson, but I thought Paole would be the other one that would get a look. But as of now, nothing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little surprised at that too. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say the only other thing that I'd say about the NFL draft is that it's now 6 years for the drought for the Cows of not having an NFL draft pick. So
it was funny there. Yeah, it was funny on their Twitter. They were saying they were arguing over whether one of their columnists said they had nobody that could potentially get drafted, and they had a guy who played like 3 snaps for them one season and then transferred. They were hoping that they could claim him, but he didn't end up getting drafted either. So it was
not a whole lot of talent over there.
Sad cow. Well,
yeah.
That's interesting though. Like I put that on my Twitter though. Like personally, like I think a guy like I know on ESPN and when they announce what team they played for, like they'll say Matt Lee, Miami, they'll say Tatum Bethune, FSU, but I think we have just as big a claim as they do. I mean, Matt Lee graduated from UCF and played 4 years. Tatum Bethune played at 3 years at UCF and only 2 at FSU. So you talk about someone that played more at UCF than that they did from the school they graduated from. At the very least, I think it should be a dual thing. They should be like UCF and FSU, UCF and Miami. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think if someone played somewhere a lot of years and also made an equal or close to equal amount of impact, like kind of like a Jalen Hurts at Bama and Oklahoma, like I don't see why we shouldn't be able to claim both of those guys. They were all conference at our schools. One of them graduated from our schools. They played more seasons with us than they did them. So I think they should count towards UCF just as much as their new school.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's one of those weird things, right? Like it's like the NFL when they announce somebody to start starting a game. It's like, now it's like going to be like 18 slashes to actually announce somebody's school that they went to.
Very true.
It'll be funny though. It'll be interesting to see, like, for Sunday Night Football when the players announce themselves and they're allowed to say wherever the heck they want to.
Like Dylan Gabriel, who does he say?
Right. Yeah. And even the two guys you just mentioned Matt Lee and Tatum Bethune. Does Matt Lee eventually say UCF? I think if he would, I think UCF fans would be happy to hear that.
I don't think Matt Lee ever will. There was some comments made by his dad as well on the way out the door. They were both pretty fired up at Gus Malzahn. So I think he's always going to be a cane as far as those announcements are concerned.
When he made his draft announcement a few weeks ago or whatever it was, he put like a, thank you Knight Nation, thank you Knoll Nation, had like a picture where he had like half UCF, half Florida State.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
And
he left when Randy Shannon left, right? They had a pretty special bond, and that was the reason he left. Of course, I don't think at that point if I remember correctly, the timing of that, we didn't know we were going to the Big 12 at that time either.
Correct.
So
right. That was before that.
He was going to FSU, and like Tatum Bethune, like he's one of those guys that I interacted with quite a bit, right? And over the years, just even walking on the sidewalk after a game, he was like, walking back to the dorm rooms or whatever, then struck up a conversation with us, and we were just like talking with my kids and me for like 45 minutes. He's an upstanding guy. I think he kind of got a raw deal from Knight Nation, to be honest. There are some more reasons behind why he left than what was talked about, and I think he kind of got a raw deal. And I do feel like he still has some UCF in his veins. Matt Lee and his dad, unfortunately, because his dad also had UCF ties.
Right.
So that may be a situation where it might be years later where they come back to the fold after they've cooled down a little bit, where Gus has left, because there's some very, very heated things that went on with regard to that. And unfortunately, the Mikey Keene argument that we had going on for a little while. Outside of that, I think a lot of these guys, again, the trend is just to use the last school they were at. I mean, it's like Tylen Grable, right? How long was Tylen Grable with us? I think 2 years. Mm-hmm. So by that extension and the math you guys are using, he was somewhere else for 3 years. He should be claiming that other school.
Oh, and I agree on the flip side too. I think he should be able to say Jacksonville State and UCF. That 100%. Like I agree with that. I'm not trying to play only one side of that. I think it should be on both sides.
Yeah, because Dylan Gabriel too. I mean, think about him. He was at UCF. He was at Oklahoma, and he's getting ready to play at Oregon. So who does he choose?
That one I don't know, because he played at some or UCLA that he was at for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just call him.
He's like the poster child for this era of college football right now.
You know what I'd like to see? Was it Key and Peele that did the names?
It was Key and Peele. Yeah,
we should do one with. They should do one with intros for schools. Right.
Parody one.
So
I went to
the University of Central Florida, Oklahoma, Oregon, UCLA or something.
The University of Transfer Portal is what it's going to
be. There you go. The University Transfer Portal. So, all right. That'll wrap it up on the draft. Thank you, Alan. I know you put a lot of work in putting these notes together. But a lot of interesting things, a lot of millionaires made, and some good things for UCF players, and wishing them nothing but success going forward. And a lot of them I will kind of follow along. And with Matt Lee, he's a Bengal, so kind of like Joe Burrow. I'm gonna be his fan, and an Oviedo guy. You know, he's one of our own, right? So he's one of our own.
Seventh round draft pick still has to make the team though, so we'll see.
I know, but I'm still gonna root for him too. There's not very many centers that are picked up, and for him to be picked up in the 7th round, there had to be enough interest there,
right?
For him to have a better shot than some of these other positions.
Agreed.
All right, so Ben, we landed a basketball player again. So we talked about this last week. I think this is 3 weeks in a row. We've landed a new basketball player, former LaSalle forward Rokas. I'm going to try it, Jokic. So
yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I believe it's Josius maybe, but yeah, Rokas Josius. Yeah, so we just, I mean, we're recording on Monday night. Just got the, kind of social media announcement by Johnny Dawkins like about 5 o'clock today, maybe 4 o'clock today. So haven't had a whole lot of time to take a look at Rokas yet. One of the things that I did see though, and again, I mean, you're looking at highlight videos and they don't show many missed layups on highlight videos or missed defensive assignments, you know what I mean? So, it's a little bit of that going on, but I watched, so he's from Lithuania originally. He played in the 2nd tier of the Lithuanian Basketball League coming up, before college, before going to LaSalle. Just watching some of his highlights from his last year in that league before he came to college, which was the 21-22 season. He seems like a player that is really smooth with the basketball, kind of has the ability to step out and shoot the 3 from deep, but he averaged 38.5% from 3-point land in both of his seasons at LaSalle, actually, not only his freshman year where he had a little bit of limited playing time, but he got much more significant minutes, had I believe 27 starts as a sophomore at LaSalle. So he played in all 33 games. So he's somebody who played significant minutes his sophomore season and still averaged nearly 40% from deep. So that's encouraging at his size. But one of the things I really noticed when I looked at his highlights from his time in Lithuania and then his highlights from last season at LaSalle is he's really filled out well, but kept that agility, seems to have kept the agility and everything that he has when he was getting recruited out of high school or out of Lithuania, whichever way you want to look at it. And so, I mean, he's 6'8", 260 now. He certainly didn't look like that in some of the highlights from his high school days. So, averaged 8.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, had a season high of 20 points against Rhode Island last year, had 13 rebounds in a game twice. So he's somebody that I believe will come in, especially we've talked about it on previous podcasts. With his size, he has the ability to come in and contribute right away for us, I think. And so hopefully some of the things that we've seen or whatever the coaching staff really sees in him from LaSalle and from previously, just talent level wise, and everything else, bodes well for this transfer pickup today in Rokas Josius.
It's a pretty good basketball program, if I'm not mistaken, right? They're decent, right? Yeah,
they've got some good history. So yeah, certainly they're in a league in the A10 that has some good basketball, just traditionally good basketball programs. Just in general, that league being a non-football necessarily league is one that always has some great mid-majors that make some noise in the NCAA tournament. I think LaSalle itself has been a little bit up and down over the last few years, but by the same token, they do have a good, rich history of doing some great things in the NCAA tournament. So him coming over from Europe and and playing at LaSalle and starting nearly every game as a sophomore. I think it bodes well for him coming, kind of stepping up in competition and stepping up to the level of the Big 12. And we'll see how it works out for us. I hope he, comes in and he's able to contribute right away.
Nice.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think I noticed was, a true stretch for us.
Yeah, I really feel like it. Yeah.
We kind of had that or wanted that or tried to play some of our players as stretch fours, but they didn't have the shooting to be able to do that. I think Scylla played a little too much stretch.
Yeah. At times.
He kind of hung out at the 3-point line a little too much for my liking, but I like the fact that he pulled down some boards as well. 8.5 points per game from a stretch four. I mean, that's very serviceable for what we would need out of him.
Agreed.
Bump that to 10 to 12, it would be even better, especially if he was hitting threes. If you're hitting 3 threes a game, have a couple layups inside the paint. We don't know what kind of defense we're going to see. Are we going to see as stingy of a defense this year? If we do, with turnovers, that could open the door for him quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
Fast break points. The one knock, if I remember correctly, on him was he wasn't a great free throw shooter. Was he around the 50s? I think something like that. Which
he was below in both of his seasons. He was below 50% from the line, and that's wild considering that he
shoots 38.5%.
38.5% from three and 48% from the line. That's something that he's really going to need to work on. It's actually quite astonishing to have somebody who's of that size averaging over 20 something minutes a game. And that's a really low free throw percentage. So that's something he's got to have to improve on.
All right. Do you want to build a snowman moment? Ben Stout, can you tell us what your average free throw shooting percentage was in college?
Oh, in college, I was like nothing because I hardly played. But in high school, I was like an 80% free throw shooter. So I was okay. I was like middle of the road, I guess. But 75, 80% in that range. I don't remember the exact percentage.
80s, you'd be like top 5 in UCF basketball history, I feel like.
Yeah, in college, I rarely saw the floor enough to really register any type of free throw percentage. But
especially as someone who's 6'8", which brings up something else. As I was putting together the video, I was trying to grab video of Ben and Trey. Obviously, if you watched it, the football side of it was Trey Neal's interception in the AC championship against Memphis. And I did find one clip on YouTube that included Ben Stout, and it was for all of like 1/10 of a second, which was him. I think he was like going up for a layup or something.
No, if you're thinking of the one that the Rowdy Knights put together, the Kirks Jerks put together right after the Atlantic Sun tournament, our sophomore year. Yes, I am in that video for like a split second. And it's actually me blocking a shot like off the backboard in my garbage time that I got at that point. But that was an awesome season. I was because our team was so good when I did come in garbage time, it was to a full arena chanting "We won, Ben." So that was pretty exciting.
Hold on, you were the poo of UCF basketball in that season?
I was that person that came off the bench way before anybody else who's current that you could think of.
Okay, so let's make sure we notate that on the description this week for the YouTube channel. Ben is
not going to be the poo of the original poo. No, thank you.
The OG poo. All right, that's gonna be mentioned throughout the podcast from now on. But yeah. I mean, this is the kind of player we need. Stretch forward, need some shooting. Obviously, our guys are a little hot and cold. Although DJ did a much better job this year, I think he finally, once he changed his shot to that rainbow shot, it took him a minute. He's finally gotten that down. And then, the rest of our shooters were streaky. So it'll be good to have someone consistent in there. And do you think he's more of a come off the bench kind of guy, like sixth man, or do you think this is kind of a starting guy? And remember, we also have a starter that's going to be coming here that's a 5-star that's reclassifying as at center this year as well, and he was on campus here this past weekend.
Right, out of DME. I think so. He's reclassifying, so we'll see. How many minutes he plays. I think he has the ability to be a starter. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, he has experience as being a starter. And I just unfortunately won't be able to fully answer that question until we kind of round out who our team is next season.
Come on, we only have 6 open roster spots.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean,
5 now.
Yeah, I think we're down to 5 now. I will say, though, that I think he is somebody that there's no doubt he's going to play significant minutes next year. Whether or not he starts consistently, time will tell. But it's interesting to me, like the last 2 transfers we've gotten. We talked last week about Keyshawn Hall, and then now we're talking about this one today in Rokas. We're able to get some size at kind of that 3-4 spot. Guys that can stretch the floor, have the ability to shoot threes, but also seem to really want to mix it up in the paint and get those rebounds, which is, especially what we talked about last week with Keyshawn Hall, from a guard position, averaging over 8.5 rebounds a game. I think that part is encouraging, I think, for how this staff is building this roster for next season. And like I said, more to come. We'll have to just see how it rounds out. And so
yeah, the other thing that's interesting with that, since you said staff, is we still haven't rounded out the staff with the 2 defections that we've had,
right.
And a byproduct of the fact that Johnny Dawkins is still negotiating his deal. So that's another interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, it's unreal how this has drug on for this long. Now, whether or not I just can't imagine that if a deal has been reached on his extension, that nothing would be leaked. I mean, it just seems like
that's not even that
happen. But
I think it's the biggest indicator is that he hasn't hired any other staff. That's
I think I agree with you. That's certainly the biggest indicator, because I mean we've already kind of we're getting close to passing the time where you should be able to you should pick up those 2 assistants. Like, I mean, it's very we're starting to get late now. I mean, we're getting into May now, and that's just interesting that those 2 spots haven't been filled, or even any word of how they're going to be filled.
Well, I mean, who's out there at this point? You know what I mean? Right. So that's the other part. All right. That's our UCF basketball update. Let's talk a little UCF baseball. Baseball started by beating Florida Gulf Coast 10-3. And then we lost the series to Cincinnati. So we went for a couple weeks ago from being potential, number 3 RPI and potential regional host to potentially not making the regional at all, depending on how we do the rest of the season here. Pitching, we left a lot of runners stranded this weekend. We got a lot of guys on base that just didn't make it home. And our pitching, especially our bullpen, which had been a strength all year, has seemed to tail off the last few series since West Virginia. So I don't know what's going on there. But it doesn't bode well. We do have Texas coming up, and based on what we, from an RPI perspective, and then also based on who we have as quality opponents going out, we pretty much have to be darn near perfect to make a regional at this point. We're still expected to do that. Kendall Rogers is still really high on us and expecting us to make a regional. Some folks have us as first 4 out already. So these guys are going to have to pull it together. All these games, these games were close until like the 8th or 9th inning, where Cincinnati just went lights out in 2 different games that we lost. So it's interesting because the hitting is failing us in tight spots. We're getting guys on, but really the only production that we're getting is out of home runs. We had a lot of them, right, the last 2 weekends, but that's where we're manufacturing the runs instead of small ball manufacture, which we've been used to doing a pretty good job all year long, and that hasn't been the case lately. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the bullpen specifically, but guys have just not been there.
Yeah, unfortunately, this past weekend, I had a lot of baseball of my own with my son's team, and I wasn't able to check out these games too much this weekend. But I'm with you. It's I think some of the promise that we've seen out of the bullpen this whole season, really, over the last few weeks, has been chipped away at a little bit, to put it nicely, where we're just kind of hanging around a little bit. We don't have enough insurance runs, and then all of a sudden, we give up a few towards the end. That was certainly the case in the previous Big 12 series against West Virginia, where it seemed like we just lost a lot of games late. And it seems to be no different during this past series. And you're right. I mean, we're right on the cusp right now with RPI. We've been kind of consistently dropping over the last few weeks, and we gotta really bring it together here soon. So we'll see.
Yeah. That we need to close out the season strong here and only maybe drop 1 or 2 games. Obviously, Alan has no idea what we're talking about. He's not aware that UCF has a baseball team, so that's why he's a little quiet.
The guy who put together the notes.
Yeah.
I got your back, Alan. I'm not on that train where I'm just bashing, whenever we bring up any other sport.
I'll tell you this though: if I start talking about baseball, it would make the podcast worse because people can see right through if you don't know what you're talking about. If I'm just gonna make some crap up or say some really shallow stuff, it's not gonna make our podcast go up in the rankings.
All right. Well, that's Alan's words. So Alan is sticking to his guns instead of learning about said baseball.
That's also another option, learning about it, but I would not be passionate about it, so it still would not come through in the podcast.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right. So until we have a bases clearing brawl, Alan is not interested. So let's
Jacurri brought some intrigue to the baseball team because he was a football and a baseball player. So I'll say that.
Who?
JRP, like he had some intrigue because he played both sports.
Yeah.
And he was a fun player to watch in both sports. I mean, he is a really exciting baseball player to watch as well.
Yeah, and he had a chance, I think, to get drafted, especially if he would have stayed. I think he would have gotten a chance to get drafted in the MLB, and I don't know how that works as far as getting drafted in the MLB. Obviously, he'd make more money at the NFL, even if he as an undrafted free agent, gives it a go and it doesn't work out. And he's a little bit older, but it'll be interesting to see if he takes a swing, quote unquote, at baseball if football doesn't pan out for him. I mean, we've
I hope he does. I hope he does if football doesn't work out, because
the Tim Tebow route. Yeah,
I mean, hopefully not the Tim Tebow route in the sense that like he doesn't wait that long to come back to the game. But I hope that if for some reason it doesn't work out this season, that he goes right into it and tries to take a crack at being a baseball player and professionally.
That's right.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of UCF players that have done both.
Right.
So it's in reverse order, but have had success. All right.
I'll say though, my first one last thing of the show. There it goes, right on cue.
Nobra got it before I did. I was just about to do it.
I'll just quit. I love how you have it queued up. I'll just say though, and I know that we had him on preseason and everything, but just this first season under Rich Wallace, it would be a shame if this team and the way they started out in the conference, it just would be a shame if this team failed to make a regional. Just kind of this tough end of the season, that they're having. I just hope that they can figure out a way to turn it around and go on a run here to make a regional, because the way that this team was put together and the way that this team has played, especially for long stretches that we saw kind of the beginning to the middle of this season, before Sundin went down, really, which is, it's not just about one player, but I think this team kind of deserves to get rewarded with the postseason, and I hope that they're able to earn that, because you're not given anything in college sports, that's for sure.
Can they play their way? Is it like the basketball where is there a conference tournament where they can play their way in, or is it just?
Yes. So that's always going to be out there. They're going to be able to get a chance to play their way into the postseason with the conference tournament, the Big 12 tournament. Just like any other sport, though, that's going to be a significant challenge. But it'll be fun to see how well they can not only finish up the season, but do well in the conference tournament as well.
All right, and that is baseball for another week. Alan, you do have an oxymoronic stat of the week, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I have some fun stuff about the NFL draft when it comes to UCF. So, couple things. So, starting off, I think we all know that DB and wide receiver has by far been the most positions that UCF has in the NFL that's been drafted. So Javon Baker became the 13th wide receiver pick in UCF history, now just trailing DB by 1. DB has 14. That's our most position. Wow. DB 14 that have been drafted to the NFL. Tylen Grable, though, first offensive lineman taken in over 10 years. The last offensive lineman drafted for UCF was Jacurri in 2011, and Grable is actually only the 4th ever offensive lineman to get drafted from UCF. So we haven't had a ton of NFL guys get drafted when it comes to offensive line. So good for Tylen Grable. When Javon Baker got drafted by the Patriots became the team to actually take the most nights. They're the team that has drafted the most nights in our program history until about an hour later when the Bills tied that. So the Patriots and the Bills, with 4 UCF picks over the course of our history, are tied for the most UCF picks. So the Bills have had Bernard Ford.
Not Jacksonville? Jacksonville's
had a lot of
all undrafted free agents, man.
Yeah, not drafts. Yeah. So Jacksonville has signed a lot of our players, or even traded for Boye and Shaquille Griffin and all these guys, but they have not actually drafted many other than Bortles and Storm Johnson, I think, might be the only 2 that they've drafted. So Bills and Patriots are tied. Bills have had Bernard Ford. They drafted Terrell Troop, Gabe, obviously, and now Grable. The Pats drafted Elgin Davis, Asante Samuel, Trey Nixon, and now Javon Baker.
Trey Nixon, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, and then so in the last 10 years, the last decade, we've had 17 picks, and only 5 of those picks are not a wide receiver or defensive back. So Grable kind of was one of the few out of those 17 since in the last decade that has not been a wide receiver DB. So I'm basically declaring UCF DB and wide receiver U because that's mainly who we get picked. So
that's been the debate, right? Are we DBU or are we wide receiver U? That's always like half people say wide receiver U and the other half say DBU.
Right.
Make sure to check out the my Twitter account, because I say something about that in my profile and have for years, right? So there's
I personally would say DBU. I think we've had way more success. Just wide receivers have obviously been drafted almost at the same level, but when you talk about the success in the NFL, I mean, Asante Samuel, for example, or Shaquille Griffin's been a Pro Bowler. Richie Grant's having a good career. Mike Hughes was a first-round draft pick. I think, obviously a lot of our wide receivers have had success too. But when I think of who's had the most,
think about it. Think about that again. I think you need to go a little deeper into UCF history. You've got Mike Sims Walker,
Brandon
Marshall. There was a certain coach that was a wide receiver that had a lot of success that was at UCF. Becton. There's a few others even before him. So again, you might want to, that might be an interesting topic for next week's oxymoronic stat of the week is Let's do a lineup of wide receivers versus DBs, and who you think had the bigger impact. Because we've got some Super Bowl winners in there at wide receiver as well.
And DB.
And DB, yes. I'm just hoping Asante Samuel finally makes it at some point into the Hall. Because
that'd
be awesome. That's been a debate for a while.
Well, I think Marshall will probably end up being our first Hall of Famer, probably, right? Or he's probably fringe.
I don't think he will. I think there might be a certain kicker that missed a Hawaii field goal. That might be
I think that would be so ironic, but I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, no, you're probably right.
Josh Sitton has a shot at it too. He was a very consistent O-lineman for a long time.
I mean, Marshall and Sitton and Prater have to be the most decorated NFL players for us, and I guess Samuel too.
Samuel as well, but I don't think Samuel never won a Super Bowl.
No, Samuel won 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots.
Oh, did he?
2 Super Bowls. Yep, he won in 2000. Yeah. The early Brady, like the first.
He was those first 2.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
A 4-time Pro Bowler as well.
Yeah, I hope he makes it. I think Brandon Marshall, he never made it to a Super Bowl, right?
No, never did. Sitton's won a Super Bowl. Ja Reed's won a Super Bowl, and I think that's it. Samuel, Reed, and Sitton, I think, might be the only Super Bowl champs for UCF.
Yeah, Walker did. We have another one that I think was like a backup or something on the team, and I don't remember.
This wasn't drafted. That's all. That's
I was talking about draft pick. So yeah. I'm sure there's probably some undrafted. I mean, I think and I actually think Jordan Franks was tight end in Kansas City when they won 1 too. He obviously wasn't drafted.
What about Saya? I think Saya Burley might have won 1 as well.
I don't know if he won it. Okay. I'll have to look at him up and see, because I didn't know that he was a Super Bowl champion.
Has Prater ever won a Super Bowl? I don't. He's been on a lot of teams.
Yes. I'm pretty sure he's won at least 1. He was with the Broncos for a long time during their run.
Was he the Broncos kicker when Peyton Manning won?
I'm pretty sure he was.
He's been in the Cardinals, the Lions, the Broncos. Where was he this past season? The Lions? He's been in a lot of teams.
I think he was with the Cardinals. Prater never won anything with the Lions, because the Lions were just
they're garbage
for a long time. So
he did not. He has not won a Super Bowl.
Has he been in one?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
All right. So while Ben looks that up, unfortunately this week we do not have Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week. But instead, you can check out the YouTube channel and the 4-minute short that he put out there about his view of the draft. While he plays with swords in the woods somewhere in South Carolina. All right. Quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch. UCF softball did beat Bethune-Cookman 8-0. They were swept by Oklahoma 3-0. However, those were very, very, very close games. Sarah Willis held Oklahoma in the second game to 2 runs scored, which is the lowest total that they've had, I believe, in the last 8 years. So very, very, very close game. We just couldn't get enough runs over the plate. There was a home run that we thought was going out, but the wind pushed back in at the end that could have tied it. But the ladies, again, Oklahoma is one of the top programs and has been one of the top programs for a very, very long time. So congratulations to them. It was senior night for them as well. So unfortunately, that's the last time we'll see some of them at home. They play at Iowa State next, and hopefully they'll get some wins there. They are still in the mix. They're still in the mix for a appearance in postseason, but they're going to need to win some games and hopefully do well in the tournament. They should be one of the top 6 teams and get a bye in the first round. So it'll be interesting to see. One other quick thing that I wanted to mention, the UCF track team, one of the things that, one of the teams that we haven't been following as closely this year that you should, with our breakout star, Renaya Jones, who also competed in the Olympics, also in the NCAAs. She had a first place finish in the 100-meter hurdles, 12:77, and third in the NCAA this past week. You need to keep watching her because she's going to make some noise in the postseason as well. Our track team has some new faces on it that are not quite as good as Renaya Jones, but do very well as well. They also had the 4x100 squad match their season best in the relay. They were third overall, first collegiate win, and continue to do big things. So watch out for UCF track. We have former Olympic hopefuls and Olympians on our team, and something that you should be aware of. Ben, do you have an update for us?
No.
Okay, he did not finish looking up that.
I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about track. Oh yes, Matt Prater did not play in an NFL Super Bowl. He did not play in the Super Bowl. He is, I think, if I'm counting this quickly, I think he's about 12th all time in field goals made in an NFL career. He is a 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time second team All Pro. So not, too much there.
Didn't he have the league's longest field goal kick for a long time?
I believe he had that record for a while. I think it might have been overtaken in the last 5-6 years or so. But yeah, he's made 401 field goals in the NFL, and Adam Vinatieri he's still about 200 behind Adam Vinatieri at 599. So
you can't blame the guy for his quarterback for scoring too many touchdowns, right? So Adam Vinatieri obviously had too many opportunities at field goals, so we'll blame it on that.
I suppose so, yeah.
All right, thank you for doing that research, as the cows would spell it. But anyway, great show this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the new video. I'm going to tweak it a little bit. It should be a little bit shorter. I'm shooting to get it around 30 to 35 seconds. Josh should be back next week. Hopefully he comes back home safely. Go check out the content they created. Continue to follow us. And if you made it all the way to the end of the show, we have been playing a little game. So you guys heard me mention Bloviate and Pugilist and whatever, and that kind of inspired a game for us that we're going to continue to play. We've kind of limited it to a group of people thus far, because we wanted to try it out. But now we're going to expand on that and allow you to send in words. Now they have to be E for everyone, because our show is E for everyone, right? That we can sprinkle into our conversations. So things like, when I mentioned to Ben, do you want to build a snowman, right? That was a user submission, and some of the big words that you heard us use were also user submissions. But try to stump us in getting us to use your word in the span of a sports show. We appreciate your continued support. Please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, give us feedback, and go Knights, and
charge on.
All right, charge on, baby. I guess I'm the one who's going to continue.